Good morning, garden friends, and welcome back to Sip, Sow, and Share, where we're going to do a deep dive, dish out some good stuff, and share insight from you, our amazing community. Now, as we dive into the questions presented that you guys have answered, because this is the thing, gardening is always better when we are growing together. So grab your favorite sip, settle in, and let's get into this. Today, I got my little Snoopy cup with my coffee. So let's dig into the questions. So the first question was, which type of garden theme excites you the most? Butterfly and pollinator garden, herb and edible garden, woodland garden, or zen? And the butterfly and pollinator garden was at 55%. The herb and edible garden was at 14%. The woodland garden was at 24%. And the zen garden was at 7%. And some of the feedback that I ended up getting, I'm taking this off of my laptop, for what some of the participants had placed in here. We had Allie, who it chose based off of her answer was the butterfly and pollinator garden. She has like an English style garden that she stated is in her front, by her front door. And then her backyard is like a bird haven, to where the pollinators can, have their smorgasbord of items to pick from. And that's the one thing that I was, mentioning to her. As you guys know, I have a bird sanctuary that provides housing, food, and also a bathing facility. And right now, my bluebirds have returned to their nest that they have made in one of the bird houses that I had put in there. So thank you so much, Allie, for your comments. The next one was June. Now, as you guys, hopefully you guys, you remember, June is in Low, Arizona. And she has limited, ability from what she says in regards to the temperatures that she has down there. So, her thing was, as far as a woodland garden, that would not be something that would be conducive to her area because of, the temperatures that they get down there. So thank you so much, June, for your comment. And then next was Cajun. And this was funny, because she said all of the above. And, when it comes to gardening, having that nice flow of variety, it keeps that interest within your garden. And it makes the palette for you to be able to have different themes within your garden that have a very cohesive feel to it. So, Cajun, thank you so very much for your response. All right. The next question was, what feature do you most find relaxing? The options were a bench or seating area, which got 23%, a fountain or water feature that got 44%, a winding garden path, which got 21%, or a flower-filled border, which got 13%. And, when I was thinking of, these options, a lot of times gardening isn't just about plants. It's about those additional accent pieces that make your garden very, cohesive, and, having those intimate areas within your garden, or, having features that bring that calmness when you are sitting out in your garden. For that, it was just more, for that question, it was just more or less what they chose, and like I said, I understand, how they ended up ranking. Maybe because you think about this. When, I don't know about you, gardening is a relaxing area for me, and be able to hear my water fountain in the background. I also have this extraordinary chime, which I don't know if you can hear it in the background. That is always something that makes working out in the garden so relaxing. So thank you guys, ladies that ended up ranking their feature that they find the most relaxing. Okay, so the next question was, how do you prefer to water your garden? And what are the added benefits? The first choice was a drip system, which got 42%. Soaker hose, that got 0. Hand watering got 50%. And sprinkler system got 8%. Now, based off of the comments, we had two individuals that stated hand watering, and the benefits. They said that they just enjoy being able to hand water their garden. That was Lakeisha. She just enjoys doing it. And as I stated to her, I enjoy hand watering, and you would think with the size of my garden, I would have it on a drip system. But part of the reason why I don't is because that allows me to stay on top of my weeds. And, because the garden, I have the front garden, I have the side gardens, and it's crucial, to stay on a routine of making sure I stay on top of my weeds. And then Iris said she likes hand watering because it gives her an opportunity to talk to her plants, and she just finds it so relaxing. And I can relate to that. You may not talk to my plants specifically, but when I go up and I see something doesn't look right, I'm asking questions. What's up? What do I need to be doing if I see something is not being successful? Now, the next response is from June. She says she has a big garden, lives in Arizona, the low part of Arizona, and get temperatures up to 117 degrees. So she has a drip system because otherwise there would be no way her plants would be able to survive in that amount of heat. And I thought to myself, yeah, that type of temperature, I probably would have an automated drip system to ensure that my plants were getting watered on a daily basis, especially if those temperatures are constantly at that level. So June, thank you so much for your choice of how you like to go about watering your garden. So ladies, thank you so much. And those that didn't add a comment, thank you so much for participating in the poll. All right. The next question is, if you could share one garden tip with a beginner, what would it be? So Siobhan had stated, I would suggest that they end up starting off small, because it can get very overwhelming, because you want, every plant in the world. But then, if it becomes too much for you, you can actually lose the joy in gardening. So, and that is such a true statement, especially if you are starting off as a new beginner in gardening. Do something that you can manage, so that, like Siobhan said, you're not losing your joy. You're not being overwhelmed by so much. And this was the one thing, that I had to step back in regards to my garden, because my thing was I needed to have everything done, but not that it was robbing me of my joy. It became overwhelming. So one of the things that I ended up doing was breaking my garden up in zones to say, okay, I'm going to work on, and a lot of it depends upon the size of the zone, to where some of them I can do 2 sections at a time. That, what, I'm going to work on this zone, and this is the only thing that I'm going to work on. And then what that does, it allows me to stay focused. It encouraged me to stay disciplined in what I've set out that I'm going to do. And then it also allows me to be able to enjoy the rest of my garden, because I have a pretty aggressive schedule for taking care of my garden, especially with me working a full-time job. So that is one thing that I would put out to individuals, depending upon, the size of your garden. Break it up to where, even if it's weeding, even if it's planting new plants, even if it's, just the basic maintenance, get on a schedule where you don't end up getting overwhelmed. So thank you so much, Siobhan, for that advice. Lakeisha said, pace yourself and learn from others. Spend time in your space. You'll be gardening, and then examine the area. The sun and the shade are important. And that is so true for new gardeners. And a lot of times we just go out there and just start planting things that we like. But this is the key. That's the part of understanding and knowing your area. You wouldn't want to put a sun-needing plant in the shade. And I remember someone had stated, and I ended up doing it, especially with us moving down here to Georgia, is to get a sense of how long, the sun is in the area, so that when you are picking your plants, you're getting the plants that, based off of the sun requirement or shade requirement, you are picking the right things. Now, I say that with a little hesitation, for the simple fact that I've gotten plants that have said full sun, 6+ hours. That's not for down here in Georgia, so I have to be aware of how long the sun, how intense, the sun is. And then even with shade, because you got some plants that like part shade. Well, what does that look like in your garden? Is that 2 to 4 hours that you're getting shade? Is that shade filtered, or is it truly a shaded area? So those are some things, that you end up taking into consideration. So Lakeisha, thank you so very much for your insight information. Okay, so the next one is Betty. And Betty says, be a student of your garden. And I love that, because gardening is about learning. And just like you go to school, go to college, even work, you're on a project, you gotta do your research, you gotta do your homework to make sure that the plants or shrubs or trees that you are choosing are being placed in an area that is conducive to them being successful. So thank you so much, Betty, for your advice. Next is Farah. She says it's okay to make mistakes. That is how you learn. Next time you will amaze yourself. And that is so true. I am dealing with something with my seedlings that I'm just about ready just to throw them out, and I know what I did. I did something that I normally don't do. And those are the mistakes that you end up learning from. I thought I was being very conscientious about how I was going to go about doing my seedlings. Well, conscientious for what I didn't work. So it's gardening is, you're always learning. And like Farah said, making a mistake, that's not a bad thing. That's a learning tool for keeping those things in mind of what not to do. Or I've had some good mistakes that ended up working out for me. So don't ever get discouraged if you're making mistakes. Take that information and learn and build off of it, so that down the road you continue to have success. All right. And then Cajun said, pick an easy plant to start, have fun, and don't sweat it too much. And that's so true. Like I said, when I came down here, not really understanding the Georgia clay, but loved gardening. It was, I would get something. And then also, I had a nice network of other gardeners that helped me understand the clay, what plants would end up being successful. And I had a section in my garden that as I got plants, whether it was purchased, whether it was plant swap, whether, somebody had given me it, I just plopped it in a location and then watched to see how it ended up doing. Was it something that, should not be in sun for 12 hours, and that allowed me to get a sense. Like I said, I started off small with plants and just plopped them in a section, just to see how they do. So that, once again, learning how the sun, how the shade, even the wind, how it ends up impacting your garden. So, Cajun, thank you so very much for your insight and advice that you would give to a new gardener. Okay, so the next advice that was given was from Iris. Iris says, try not to get overwhelmed. And if you fail, try it again or ask for advice. And that is the beauty of gardening. That's part of the reason why I love gardening, because it doesn't matter at what stage you are in your garden journey. You can always end up learning something from someone else. But like Ira said, don't get frustrated or overwhelmed. Just figure out something else. So thank you so much, Iris, for your advice. Next is Jean. Jean says, which I found this funny, don't feel obligated to keep plants, trees, or bushes that you don't love. I don't know if there are any that I don't love. You know what? I'll say this. I think it's sweet Sprea. I loved the shrub, but did not realize that it was invasive. So I put things in my garden. I want them to stay in the location that I planted them. And this one was one that, yeah, it was telling me you're not going to dictate where I go. So to offset that, instead of doing away with it, I actually put it in a pot, because I had asked, hey, how do I keep this guy from its runners showing up anywhere in my garden? And someone had recommended that I use a pot to contain it. So, Jean, thank you so much for your advice that you would give to a new gardener. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for participating in Sip, Sow, and Share, a community of learning, of sharing ideas. So as the questions, I put out there, which is every Thursday of the month, I so welcome you to participate. And if you enjoy the engagement, take the time to take a look at, my long form videos. And if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking my page. Well, thank you again for visiting Inspiring Garden Corner, and I look forward to seeing you next month.